أهلا فيكم متابعينا، حلقة جديدة من برنامج شرايها عليا. اليوم مرة ثانية عندنا حوار عن علاج السرطان بالطب البديل مع دكتور توماس لودي، عنده عيادة في أمريكا وعيادة في تايلاند أيضا. في الحلقات السابقة تكلمنا عن مواضيع كثيرة لها علاقة بالسرطان. الحلقات كلها فيها ترجمة، وإذا حابين تشوفون الترجمة لازم تدخلون في الإعدادات في الفيديو نفسه وتضغطون على زر الترجمة عشان تطلع لكم الترجمة بالعربي. فحوارنا اليوم إن شاء الله يكون جزء منه إجابات على أسئلتكم اللي أنتم حطيتوها في التعليقات من الحلقات السابقة. Thank you very much, Dr. Lodi. It's great to have you on the show again. I have a lot of questions for you, but I'm going to try today to limit this episode to one specific question, which is, I want to know, because you see people from different parts of the world, and I'm curious about knowing if you see a pattern in the types of cancers in people that come to you from the Middle East.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, because we've had quite a few people, as you say, from all over the Middle East, from Kuwait to Abu Dhabi to UAE. I mean, it's just Bahrain, everywhere. So, and Iraq now, it's very interesting. Mostly, we're seeing gastrointestinal related cancers. So, colon cancer, pancreatic cancer. You know, these are organs involved in digestion, and also liver cancer. Now, liver, and this is strange because liver cancer is usually a primary liver cancer, not colon cancer that's spread to the liver or breast cancer that's spread to the liver, but a primary liver tumor is probably 99% of the time related to hepatitis B or hepatitis C. You know, those are usually precipitated. Now, in fact, I have someone right now at our center who had neither and has got a primary, what we call hepatoma. And we've seen this before as well. So the question is, what is the route? You know, usually, if we think about cancer, we realize that lots of factors play into it. But when we get there are specific cancers that where one of the factors that is necessary is a specific viral pathogen being involved. So, like, for example, cervical cancer. You know, we'll see human papillomavirus, or with nasopharyngeal cancers. We will always see either Epstein-Barr, or we'll see now human papilloma. Human papillomavirus, which is usually cervical, is in there. We're now seeing it, of course, because of human behavior. We're seeing it in the nasopharyngeal area as well. It's causing cancers. But so anyway, so we have this hepatoma, colorectal cancers, and pancreatic cancers, I think, are the most. Now, in women, we are seeing the breast cancer, which is, you know, unfortunately, around the world, it seems to be the leading cause of death worldwide for women between certain ages.
So, if we were to go back to the digestive-related cancers, do you think that it has to do with a common pattern in lifestyle, food decisions? I mean, you wouldn't think liver cancer in an area where drinking or alcohol is not really a big part of the culture. What else could be the cause for liver deterioration?
Well, first of all, we have to always keep in mind that there are pathogens that we've not yet identified, and so we don't know how to screen for them. So, you know, for example, in the old days when you go to donate blood, they would screen for hepatitis A and B because they didn't know about C in those days. But people that would get hepatitis, and it wasn't A and it wasn't B, guess what they called it? Non-A, non-B. So there was A, B, or non-A, non-B. Now, but so they couldn't screen for it. But now we know that's hepatitis C. So when you go to donate your blood, they test you for hepatitis C as well. So what I'm saying is that the point there is that there are pathogens all over that we can't identify. I think most autoimmune diseases are really that we have an unidentified pathogen. The immune system doesn't make a mistake and start attacking the body. It's going after something specifically. It knows what it's doing. Nature doesn't make mistakes. Nature functions under the law of necessity, and it does what's needed to be done. We just haven't identified it. So there may be something involved. There might be a pathogen involved there with the liver. But all in all, in the digestive, what I see in the Middle East is really high, disproportionately high consumption of meat. relative to vegetables. And it's just, it's just the way it is, it's just the way it is. So when we look at that, we realize that, and there are several consequences of that. But one is, on a physiological basis, is constipation, because meat doesn't have the fiber that vegetables have, and so the meat, the waste that's accumulating in the GI tract from meat doesn't have feet. It can't walk. It gets stuck, and we see that a lot. And so when you get constipation, what happens is you get a lack of movement. The normal flora, the bacterial flora, they change, they morph into other kinds of organisms under certain circumstances. So the environment becomes very filthy and very acidic, and they start to morph, and we start to see all sorts of unusual pathogens growing in there. The other thing that happens, and this is a big deal, the most healthy bacteria that we can have in our colons is called Bifidobacter bifidus. Okay, and it should make up the majority of the colonic normal bacteria. One of the things that it does is it produces a short-chain fatty acid that is called butyric acid. It's where butter gets its name. Okay, and butyric acid is so it's the primary fuel source for the colonocytes. That is, the cells that make up the lining of the colon require it for fuel. It's their primary fuel source, number one. Number two, butyric acid in certain amounts, so at certain levels, is necessary to stimulate apoptosis, which is programmed cellular death, because the cells that line the colon need to die and be replaced every 3 days. So we actually have the new lining all the way from our mouth to our anus. Every 3 days is replaced. So in order for a cell to be replaced, first of all, that one has to die, and then you make a new one. Well, if apoptosis is not stimulated, then it'll continue to grow. So what happens if you have continued growth equals cancer? So here we're not having the apoptotic signal, we're having continued growth, and the colon cell, the cells of the colon aren't healthy because they're not getting the right fuel from the butyric acid. So that's one cause. The other thing is that we know that in animal protein stimulates the Mtor gene. Now the Mtor gene is the gene that gets turned on and expressed for building muscle. So somebody who's going to be working out in the gym and want to get big muscles will get that will be stimulated. Okay, so in other words, it causes proliferation. Well, we find it turned on in most cancers, many cancers, and that's it. And we know it's stimulated by animal protein. So you've got that constipation, which is stasis, changing of the normal bacteria and the normal microflora in there. We've got the lack of fuel to make the cells healthy in the colon, and then we've got the turning on of expressing genes that will stimulate cancer growth as well. So you've got all those factors that I think make colon cancer inevitable.
So what to you is the definition of constipation? Because I know for some people they'll say, oh, I go every other day and that's my norm. I won't call that constipation. So let's just clarify what constipation really is.
Okay, all right, that's a very good question. Well, let's look at the purpose, what the colon does. What the colon does, when it receives from the small intestines, it receives a substance that we call chyme, C-H-Y-M-E. In fact, what you eat becomes chyme the moment you swallow it. It's just at different phases, okay? So it's mixed with saliva and enzymes and mucus and gets down in there. By the time it gets to your colon, again, it's been changed again, but it's still chyme. So when the chyme enters the colon, one of the main functions of the colon is to remove the remaining 10 to 15% of the water that's there, right? Okay, now when that doesn't happen, of course, we have what's called diarrhea, right? Because it's water. But so the remaining 10 to 15%. Now, how long does that take? Well, it takes approximately 6 hours from the time it enters until all the water is removed, which means that it'll now be of the right consistency and ready to be expelled in a functioning colon. So if you're eating 3 meals a day, you should be having a minimum of 3 bowel movements a day. Okay, 3 to 4 bowel movements a day.
Which is so rare today. I mean, you rarely see people saying yes, I have. And if they do, they probably think it's diarrhea rather than the norm.
Yeah. And so that would be a healthy amount of bowel movement. And if we just look around in nature, like if you want to know what constipation, if you want to know what not constipated is, walk behind a horse for a half hour. Okay, you'll figure it out. But if you look at all creatures have multiple movements all day long because they're eating. You know, I'm talking about in the wild. I'm not talking about domesticated animals. But animals in the wild, that's because they're eating their native foods out of instinct. You know, like our dogs and cats are getting our same trash that we get, and they have the same. Their veterinarians are treating allergies, cancers, heart. They're treating the same things that we have. You don't see that in the big animal vets. You know, they're not seeing that sort of thing. So anyway, multiple bowel movements a day. Let's look at our close cousins, the gorilla and the chimp. You know, pretty much it's happening all day. You know, they don't have to go somewhere. It just comes out. And so that would be normal. In other words, let's not use the word normal. Let's look at the word healthy. Healthy bowel habits versus normal. Because the normal bowel habit, maybe they consider once a day. But think about it. Your colon is about 1.5 meters. Now, if you have one bowel movement a day, and that's about this much, or this much if it's a big bowel movement, that means you still have this much inside of you, right? So now what's happening? Well, the colon is still doing what it was designed to do, and that is absorb water. So as it absorbs more and more water, it starts to become hardened and impact and dried. Now also, what else is in the feces besides water? Toxins. Okay, so now as they're absorbed into the blood vessels of the colon, they all coalesce into the main vein called the portal vein that goes back to the liver. So basically what you have is called auto-intoxication. You're pulling toxins out and feeding them back to your liver. So your liver is not only having to deal with what you put in the mouth, it's getting recycled waste from the colon. So now we have an overburdened liver as well. So as you can see, there's all kinds of bad things. The other thing I want to bring to the attention of everyone is that if you look at a chart, an anatomical chart, here's the small intestines going into the large intestines, and here's the large intestines. It goes up here, it's called the ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon, and then the rectosigmoid area. Now, where the small intestines, the ileum, enters the large intestines, there's a little pouch there called the cecum. And hanging off the cecum is the appendix. Now, the cecum doesn't get much movement, okay, and the appendix gets no movement. So doctors will tell you that the appendix is not necessary. That's why they remove them all the time. They call it, the medical parlance says that it's a vestigial organ. In other words, it was necessary at one point in our evolution, but now it's not. It turns out that if you're eating a healthy diet, which means vegetables, lots of fiber, then as it leaves the ileum and goes into the cecum, it brushes it. So the cecum is clean. But the appendix will not be. It'll still have an area there where there's some impacted stuff. Not impacted, but there's some waste in there. Why do we have that? It turns out that's our nursery. That's where we grow all of our healthy bacteria that are necessary to replenish it if there's as necessary. So that's the source. It's the nursery for bacteria. And we know this by looking at hospitals. In people who get large doses of antibiotics in hospitals, they get a condition called Clostridia difficile, which is the overgrowth of a pathogenic organism, because they don't have the healthy ones to replenish it. So they're getting high doses of antibiotics, it's wiping out their normal guys, and they get this thing called C. diff, Clostridia difficile, except if they have an appendix. If you have an intact appendix, you're less likely to get it because you're able to recolonize. But those people that go in with an appendix that's not there anymore, that's been taken out, easily get C. diff. So that kind of proves what we're talking about. But anyway, so now if you're not eating a lot of vegetables, you're eating, breads, pastries, potatoes, things like that, unless you're eating a raw potato. You're getting all these things that don't have any feet, they don't grip. They go in there, and we don't sweep clean the cecum. So the cecum will maintain things for decades. I had a woman who, after her 18th colonic, had a piece of corn coming out. She was in her late 40s. She hadn't had corn since she was 12. because she had an anaphylactic, a near-death allergic reaction to corn. So from 12 to 48, she hadn't eaten corn, and on her 18th colonic at our center, a piece of corn came out. So where was it? It was in that cecum, sitting in that cecum. And I think on our way out of Eden, God slapped a cecum on us. You know, and there it is, you're going to die now.
So I'm curious. Yeah, that's very funny. I'm curious if, because people watching this now might think, oh my God, I've had constipation since God knows how many years, and therefore I will get colon cancer. So I'm curious to know if you know what percentage, let's say, chronic constipation raises our chances of a cancer such as colon cancer by. So for example, let's say my chances of getting colon cancer increase by X% if I'm constipated or if I've had a history of constipation.
You know, that's a very good question. I don't know if it's ever been looked at, and you know, if anyone really has those numbers. But this is what I can tell you from my practice, 20 years. I've never met anyone with colon cancer that wasn't constipated.
Okay, that's kind of my question actually. Yes. So the pattern, so you're saying that the pattern in the Middle East then might even be constipation rather than just even colon cancer, right? So if right, people are coming in with that cancer.
But with the chronic constipation comes a whole slew of other things, because we know that to be chronically constipated, you have to be eating the wrong foods, and the foods that you are eating can also be, as we said, be stimulating other mechanisms of cancer. But the question is, why the colon, and why aren't you getting it in the breast if you're constipated and all that sort of thing? And that's because of the local environment that is a result of the constipation and the dysbiosis, the lack of healthy bacteria.
And then wouldn't you say, because you were explaining about the colon and how the toxins recycle as well if you haven't eliminated them correctly, then the constipation would be a precursor for other cancers as well? Or would they first get the colon cancer and then be predisposed to the others?
No. So they could get it somewhere else. So for, let's say a woman who's had an estrogen-dominant hormonal system for a long time, she's got fibrocystic breasts, she's got cysts on her ovaries, she's got an uterine fibroid, you know, all those sorts of things. So here she is. Now she starts, because remember, this recycling of toxins results in an increased toxic load in our blood called toxemia. So they get deposited to the whole body. So really, you're toxifying the whole body with chronic constipation. So yeah, so now that's the tipping point to an already hormonal imbalance. We'll see either a breast cancer, ovarian cancer, or some other kind.
Yeah, and then would your approach be? Let me rephrase. Would it be as simple as clearing the colon to prevent cancer or to heal from cancer? Because that sounds like I could just go get a colon hydrotherapy on a regular basis, or get an enema kit at home and just do that and then heal colon cancer. Or does it get more complicated because you've had a history of constipation, therefore the healing process will take longer?
Right. It's more complicated than that, because what you have to do is also eliminate any toxins in foods. You know, it's kind of like you may have a predisposal to lung cancer because you've been smoking and you're constipated. So now if you clear up the constipation but you still smoke, you're not going to really modify your chances that much. You need to do both. But you will decrease it. It's very interesting that a person who eats a vegan smoker has the same risk of lung cancer as a non-vegan non-smoker.
Oh, really? Okay.
Isn't that weird?
So you've eliminated one and added the other,
In other words, you know, the smoking is one thing, but it's only one thing, because we all know of people. Oh, my grandfather smoked until he was 98. Yeah. Okay. So I'm not going to recommend smoking. You know.
Yeah. And what have been your, let's say that the success rates of healing colon cancer using alternative methods? Is that one of the harder ones to cure? Is it one of the easy ones?
It depends on several things. One is where it has spread to before they come, right? So if it's still a primary lesion in the colon, and it's maybe causing some narrowing or things like that, but it still hasn't gone to the liver or the lungs and everything. So that's one condition, which is a lot easier to treat. But if it's gone to the liver and the lungs, and there is actually compromise of the liver functions, then we've got a bigger battle to fight. And if the lungs are not getting enough oxygen, so it's really, if it's in the brain, so it really depends. But colon cancer, just in and of itself, is breast cancer. They're all pretty much the same. We can, in the vast majority of cases, get rid of the cancer. Okay, that's not hard. You can go to a surgeon, they can cut it out. That's not hard to get rid of it. The hard part is to keep it gone. It keeps coming back. And that's why what I consider the most important thing that people get is the education and the experience. You need three things when you come to a place like ours, where you change your database. Okay, so in other words, you learn. We learn, oh, this is not really in our best interest, so this is better. So you learn, okay, number one. Number two, you get the tools. We have workshops where you're learning how to make things and how to go shopping and what to prepare and all this. So you get the tools and the knowledge. The third thing that you need is the experience, because without the experience of health or an approximation to health, it's all theory. It's just theory. And theory you won't remember tomorrow. So you come here and you go through a detoxification, you get cleansed, you say, wow, I feel great, I never felt this good, blah, blah, blah. More energy. Now you've got knowledge, tools, and experience. You're more likely to carry it into your life. Even then, I find, 9 months later, I had so many tragic cases where I had people who were so compliant, they were so positive, they did everything. They went back, and we stayed in touch for 6 months, 9 months, a year and a half, and then, oh, Dr. Lodi, I slipped, now I'm here, and then next thing I know. So that's what we have to remember. Because it's when people say to us, how long do I have to eat this way? I say, well, can you imagine if somebody came to me and said, how long do I have to quit smoking? What's my answer? Well, as long as you want to breathe, So you have to understand that this lifestyle change is for life. But, okay, that means you're not able to eat X, Y, and Z. But guess what? The benefits are you've got energy, you've got clarity, you've got, you're motivated, you're positive. Okay, so, what is eating? Eating, if I eat the meal of my dreams, my favorite meal, whatever it is, how much pleasure am I getting? Well, maybe the first bite, I'm going, Maybe part of the second bite, and then I start talking. Pretty soon I'm on my 8th bite, and I was in a conversation, or I was thinking about, before I know it, I'm almost near the end. So if I added up all the moments of pleasure from that meal, they might come to at most 2 minutes or 3 minutes. So I'm going to trade 3 minutes of this sensory experience for my health, for my life. When you look at it in those terms, and that's what I want. And the other thing I remind people, remember, whatever you're eating, 20 minutes you'll be full. 30 minutes you'll be full. So at most you're giving up 30 minutes or 20 minutes. Okay, so we have to look at it in that terms, but we don't think of it that way. So that's the sad thing. So therefore, when I give people a prescription for going home, it involves going to bed early, eating certain foods, and reading every day in the mornings before your day starts. And I give a list of books that need to be read 100 times each. And this way, you can keep refreshing the data. Otherwise, when you go into the world, you're going to see an advertising poster of a beautiful woman or a punk guy eating something bad or smoking. And what's the subliminal message? If you want to look good and feel good, you're going to eat like this.
Well, really, it's digestive cancers in general are really a result of the modern day diet, right? These are things that we never used to see before. So it's not really even teaching them how to do it. It's just reminding them of how intrinsically we used to do it. So by instinct, we should know what to do. We forgot. And now people just need to go back on track. So I hope this gives people some sort of incentive to at least look at constipation a bit more seriously, but digestive issues in general, I think are a big issue in the Middle East, and I'm sure everywhere else as well. But I think here, because we have the sedentary lifestyle, you know, the refined foods and the meats, they all come into play together. So thank you, Dr. Lodi. I have other questions for you, but I want to address them in other episodes. We've done a cancer protocols episode before, and that was very well received. And one of the tips you gave was the vitamin C intravenously and how that plays a role in cancer. So I want to ask you about that, about more details about that. But we'll do that in another episode. We'll dedicate a whole episode to that. So thank you very much, Dr. Lodi. I appreciate it. شكرا لمتابعتكم. إن شاء الله عجبتكم هذه الحلقة. حطوا لنا أسئلتكم في التعليق، ولا تنسون تحطون حق الحلقة لايك، تشتركون في القناة عشان تنتشر الحلقة أكثر إن شاء الله وتفيد ناس أكثر. تابعونا في الحلقة القادمة. شكرا لكم.